Well, this is All Out Politics News, Debate and Opinion from the heart of Westminster, where it's important to say all we have are the results so far. More than half the councils are yet to declare the results in yesterday's council elections. And we just have the statistics. We don't know what everyone was thinking when they voted, but let's at least look at the pattern of the night, the state of the parties. As I say, 110 councils have declared, 238 still to go, including everyone in Northern Ireland. There are, the Conservatives are down over 400 seats. Labour is down 85 at the moment. The Liberal Democrats are up over 300. The Greens are up 42. UKIP have lost seats, partly because the party has not been standing in nearly so many councils as it did 4 years ago. And the others and the independents, they're also picking up. And this is being widely seen as a reaction against the mainstream parties, both Labour and Conservative. Well, joining me to discuss that are the political journalist and commentator Isabel Oakeshott, the director of the Institute for Government, Bronwen Maddox, former speechwriter for Ed Miliband and advisor at the Number 10 Strategy Unit, James Morris, and Sean Kemp, former special advisor to Nick Clegg. Well, let's work around the table for our interpretation of the mood of the country. Let's start with you, Sean.
Well, it's just reading from being a Lib Dem who can sit down and talk about decent election results for once still. The party's obviously very happy. I mean, these are now a top end of expectations that Lib Dems had. And I think what they're liking about it as well, apart from just the gains, is you're seeing them rebuild in areas of previous strength. It's very much almost the Paddy Ashdown tactic, where you built up your council base, that then let you elect MPs and so on. So we've been talking about Lib Dem fight back for a lot in the Lib Dems, and sometimes it's felt like a hashtag and not much else. This feels like it's actually the first big step.
And are you saying, I mean, why do you think this has happened?
I think because they've got a clarity of message on Brexit. You can't deny that. If you look at Labour and the Tories, I think they look muddled on Brexit for different reasons. The Lib Dems have given themselves a very clear message they can go out and campaign on quite confidently. I think that's an advantage they've really been able to play with at these elections, and that served them well. And look, there's frustration with the other parties. You can't deny that. People are looking at politics at the moment and sort of don't like what the two big parties are doing and want to react against it.
James, what do you think?
Well, it's easy to interpret it as all about Brexit and a reaction to that, but actually I think a lot of what's going on is just an anti-politics screw you to the main two parties. If you look at the Liberal Democrat results, they've actually done really well in Leave areas as well as Remain areas, and the independents have gone up significantly. So it's hard to interpret those as a clear mandate either for a stronger Leave position or a stronger Remain position.
Quite a lot of people on the Labour side are tweeting, actually, the second issue is it's all about Jeremy Corbyn and people don't like Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, so Labour have lost seats in this cycle at every local election, bar one, since 1995. Jeremy Corbyn really should be turning that rather than continuing the tradition. So it is a very disappointing night for the Labour Party. He's 9 points behind Theresa May as best Prime Minister at a time when her own cabinet don't think she's much of a Prime Minister. So and the Conservative Party are confronting their leadership issue. The Labour Party are pushing it in the margins, and partly because the party itself is more galvanised around Brexit than leadership at the moment. That might change because you can't have a strong position without a strong leader. And I think the message from today is not so much more Brexit or less Brexit, but strong leadership and clarity of position. The Lib Dems have that, Change UK has that, the Labour Party don't, the Conservative Party don't. Brexit Party absolutely does. And those parties with strong positions, Brexit, Remain, are in a strong position.
Isabel.
In which case you would wonder why UKIP has done so badly, and the reason partly, as you touched upon, is because they haven't fielded as many candidates. Why haven't they done that? Because they've hemorrhaged money. They're no longer a credible political offering. What is, of course, significant... And
you say that as somebody who's studied the party quite closely.
Well, I've certainly studied the party quite closely, if not supported it. What's remarkable, well, will be remarkable to see, is where that support goes in the European elections, because, of course, the Brexit Party did not field candidates for these local elections, and I think we'll see something quite different then.
What do you think, I mean, can you trace a pattern in terms of the change of mood in these results?
I think you absolutely can. I would agree with what everybody else has said so far. It's sort of a plague on both your houses in terms of the two main parties, and a feeling that neither the Conservatives nor Labour have a particularly clear position on Brexit. And you suggested that the Tory party is confronting its leadership issue. Well, it isn't. It's talking a lot about it, but, you know, week after week we go on, we still have Prime Minister Theresa May, and I think people are immensely frustrated, and they've looked down their ballot paper and have just put it either many people have actually spoilt their ballot papers, or they've put across in anything that isn't the Conservatives or the Labour Party at this point.
Now, of course, we should say that turnout for the local elections looks to have been just above 30%, which is pretty typical for local elections, not what happened in these local elections 4 years ago. But 2/3 of the electorate did have the opportunity to vote yesterday across the UK, roughly 2/3. I mean, Bronwen Maddox, does that mean that those people who tend to be Brexit supporters who are messaging me this morning saying, you know, low turnout, nothing to see here, move on, are they right?
No, I don't think they are. I think this is a typical turnout, as you said, for local elections. What happened 4 years ago was that it coincided with the general election, which has a much higher turnout, so it got the benefit of that. People just had to reach for another bit of paper and tick on that. So I don't, no, I wouldn't say that. I think what the interest to me is what has happened to the Labour vote. Obviously, some of the Labour Remain voters may well have gone to the Lib Dems, but the Labour Leave voters may well, if they're trying to express frustration at the party's lack of clarity on its message, may well have gone to these independents. And we're going to get a second shot at what that means in the European Parliament elections, I think, much more clearly.
Although, you know, it should be said that, you know, net losses of 85, given the number of seats standing, I mean, it's not a rout, is it?
It's not a rout. It's not a rout, and we should say what's happening to the Conservatives is not a surprise. But the Labour one, while not a rout, is more of a surprise because they had been hoping, you know, to do much better than that, capitalising on the Conservatives' disarray over Brexit. But
So
it's when their own disarray or their own lack of, you know, their studied ambiguity on Brexit is really coming home to them. It seems to me.
Well, that, of course, is what the National Executive decided for this week. But we have got these, supposedly the final round of the talks with the Conservatives next week for the Labour Party. I mean, do you think that, you know, just to get this whole thing out of the way, we could see Mr Corbyn and Mrs May saying, oh, for God's sake, let's just get this over the line so we can move on?
Well, in some ways, it's in both their interests to do so. Either way, they need to take a strong leadership position. John McDonnell this morning seemed to draw that lesson. He said, what we need to do is get on with it. Someone asked him what he meant by that. He said, whichever way. So that's not leadership. Before the Brexit referendum, only 6% of voters cared about Europe. The idea that the country is totally polarised into Remainers and Leavers just because TV studios and Westminster is not right. What people do want is strong leadership, direction, some of the things Jeremy Corbyn promised at the beginning, and I think Labour have to offer that either way. Otherwise, these other parties from the outside, whether it's the Brexit Party or the others, Liberal Democrats too, are going to offer stronger leadership, more clarity, and people can get behind something.
I would disagree with what you just said there about it being in both parties' interest to come to some agreement. I know there's a lot of speculation that maybe the Conservative leadership is inching towards some kind of deal with Labour. I don't think it's in Labour's interest at all to agree anything with Theresa May. I think it's in their interest to look like they're trying really hard and at the last minute pull the plug, because what Labour really wants, of course, is a general election, though based on last night's results, be careful what you wish for.
If there were to be an agreement, could the Lib Dems stop it?
Could the Lib Dems stop it in Parliament? I don't think they quite have enough MPs really to do that.
Well, no, but I mean in terms of, you know, building a coalition to stop it, or...
I think the parliamentary arithmetic would get very tight on this, and I think there would come a point where what you've seen in the sort of the Remain alliance, if you want to call them that or whatever, is a split, I think, between some people who just will be, we want, if it's not a second referendum at all costs, we're just going to sort of blow it all up. And people who maybe, I think, in long-term strategic interest is to start thinking about if some form of Brexit does happen, well then how are you dealing? How has this become a long-term thing for Lib Dems and other Remainers rather than just about the second referendum?
I don't know if you'll be pleased to hear this, but Guy Verhofstadt has just tweeted congratulations to the Liberal Democrats. He, of course, belongs to the same bloc in the European
I think
Parliament.
he's going out campaigning for them
Excellent
in the
result.
Euros.
Real momentum for pro-Europeans in the UK.
He's a great
Now
recruiting
ahead of
sergeant
EU
for
elections.
Brexiteers, I have
Do
to
you think
say.
that's good news for the pro-European side in the European elections that Guy Verhofstadt's getting?
No,
excited?
it's because
He helps Brexit side.
it's colourful, but people have made up their minds not only on Brexit, I think, but on Guy Verhofstadt. But what we don't know, actually, I think that this is a Brexit story that we're seeing playing out in this. But what we don't know is what people are actually saying about their local councils, and that's going to come through. I think as we get more of the results, more of the narrative, and that is important because these local councils have had enormous cuts in the past.
That's the thing, isn't it?
In the past few years. In the beginning, as austerity kicked in, I have to say I think some of those cuts were deserved. That local government had got in some cases quite generously funded, and we've had local councillors say to us, actually, the first cuts were easy. The past few years, no way. And they're also having to manage social care, the care for elderly, often with dementia, out of these tight budgets. They've been given little increases that they can give, that they can put on council taxes, but no way are those going to be enough to pay for social care. And so, what I would love to know from all this is what local people are really feeling about those and whether they're taking it out on their councils or seeing...
we will be speaking to James Brokenshire and we'll ask him about that because, of course, it's... might be one of the reasons why the Conservatives are doing badly because they've been the ones from the centre.
It may well.
Okay, thank you all very much indeed.